look at your Bible and open the table of contents. If you think the New Testament is arranged in the order it was actually written, you have already fallen for the first layer of the deception. The system didn't want you tracking the countdown. They scrambled the transmission. They took a burning, real-time tactical communications network and sorted it strictly by word count. Think about that. Romans is placed first among the epistles simply because it is the longest. By flattening the timeline, the institutional religious matrix managed to accomplish something catastrophic. They turned a high-stakes, accelerating apocalyptic warning system into a collection of safe, detached academic essays. They neutralized the urgency. They made you think the first-century apostles were just sitting around in ivory towers writing systematic theology, rather than running an underground resistance network while the clock ticked down to a massive historical pivot. But when you pull the thread and stack these letters chronologically, the historical narrative completely shifts. You begin to see a terrifying, escalating shift in tone, speed, and vocabulary. The early letters read like localized field reports. The final letters read like a frantic broadcast from inside a burning house, right before the sparks of the Jewish-Roman War consumed the old world. Today, we are putting the gears back in the clock. We are breaking down the hard timeline facts the religious system buried, proving that the New Testament is a military-grade countdown. Let's lay out the concrete forensic timeline. The early window opens around 45 to 50 AD. This is where James and Galatians actually sit. Look at the data. James writes his letter around 45 AD, explicitly addressing the 12 tribes scattered abroad. Notice the historical context. The temple in Jerusalem is fully standing. The old sacrificial system is completely operational. There is no global Roman persecution yet, because Rome doesn't care about the movement. The trials are localized famines and minor skirmishes with religious elites. By 48 AD, Paul pens Galatians, addressing the very first systemic breach where saboteurs tried to drag believers back into the physical temple matrix. A system that was physically about to be demolished. Flash forward to the mid-window between 51 and 60 AD. The temperature begins to spike. In 51 AD, Paul writes 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. Suddenly, the language mutates. He isn't just talking about local church conduct. He is forced to issue classified warnings about a restrainer, warning that the mystery of lawlessness is already actively operating in the shadows. Look under the surface of the text. In 49 AD, Emperor Claudius expels all Jews from Rome due to rioting over the gospel. The church is forced into the underground house network. The letters are organizing an army, because the writers can see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Now we hit the cliff edge. The late window sits between 61 and 68 AD. This isn't long-term planning anymore. This is a frantic evacuation order. Look at the book of Hebrews, written right on the eve of the Jewish-Roman War. The author is explicitly screaming at Hebrew believers to go forth to him outside the camp. Why? Because he states clearly that the Old Covenant system is obsolete, growing old, and ready to vanish away. That's not abstract theology. That's a literal, structural warning before Roman legions surround the city walls. The linguistic forensics don't lie. In the early window of 45 AD, James writes that trials are poikilos, meaning various, colorful, or diverse. He treats them like standard character builders. But by the time you reach the late window in 64 AD, 1 Peter violently shifts the vocabulary to pyrosis, a literal baking, an intense, white-hot, smelting furnace. Peter screams at them not to be surprised by the fiery trial. Why the sudden shift? Because in 64 AD, the Great Fire of Rome happens, and Nero begins using Christians as literal human torches to light his evening gardens. The text isn't a textbook. It's an encrypted wartime broadcast ticking down to zero. And this is exactly where the chronological cover-up ties directly into the grand deception of the little season. Why did the system scramble the timeline? Because if you realize the clock ran out on the old world back then, and that the cataclysm of 70 AD was the literal, violent closing of that age, the entire mainstream prophetic narrative collapses. The system desperately wants you hyper-focused on a far-off, futuristic, Hollywood-style apocalypse. They want you waiting for a physical third temple because it keeps you completely blind to the spiritual prison house they've built around you right now. If the age ended when Jesus said it would, then history as we know it has been systematically falsified. We are occupying the post-millennial little season, an era where the enemy has been loosed for a short time to deceive the nations, overlaying reality with a digital matrix and using silicon sorcery to trap human consciousness. They scrambled the Bibles so you would look for a future trap instead of waking up to the current deception. We don't answer to corporate sponsors, and we don't have a donation link. We don't want your money. We want your eyes open. Support the resistance by smashing the like button, subscribing to this channel, and sharing this broadcast. Drop a comment below with any prayer requests, no matter how heavy the burden. The creator of this channel is personally going to read through every single line and pray over your requests. We are building an ark, not a generic audience. Let's look at the unkillable force they tried to bury. They scrambled the sequence to make you passive, but they forgot one thing: the absolute, unkillable power of the gospel truth. The religious matrix wants you to think the gospel is a fragile defensive set of rules designed to keep you nice until an escape hatch opens. But looking at this chronological timeline proves the exact opposite. The gospel is an offensive, military-grade weapon of absolute reality. It was forged under localized pressure and refined inside the literal smelting furnace of Nero's madness. They tried to drown it in blood, they tried to burn the letters, they tried to rewrite the calendar, and the gospel still tore the Roman Empire to shreds from the inside out. Why? Because the finished work of Christ is an unshakable, cosmic finality. When that first-century countdown hit zero, the old system was shattered forever, and the kingdom was established in spirit and truth. You cannot earn this, and you cannot lose it. Grace is the ultimate defiance of the system. Rest is a weapon. When you realize the absolute magnitude of what was achieved on that timeline, you stop fearing their silicon sorcery. You realize you aren't a helpless victim trapped in a collapsing world. You are a warrior occupying an empire where the enemy has already been legally defeated and is simply running out his clock. Stop playing by the rigged rules of a scrambled timeline. Build your ark. Leave your prayers in the comments and keep pulling the thread until the whole false reality unravels.